Zeros and ones, random, irrelevant. But when you combine them, the only limit is our imagination. Real solutions form the future, shape our lives. So, let's get to it. Code it. Engineer it. What are you waiting for?
And a very, very good morning to you all again from sunny Helsinki. I cannot believe that it's a year since we had our Frontline Summit 2020, and here we are again, edition 21. The year has been a peculiar one, and digitalization and scaling digital, which is our topic, has really shown its profound importance to organizations around the world. We all want to grab on to the opportunities of technology and develop our organizations, may they be private or public, to answer the challenges that we see, but also to deliver better services or products to our clients and users. The profoundness of that change has been really, really significant during this year. And that's one reason why we chose scaling digital as our topic today. We all want to do the new thing. It's interesting and gets our juices flowing. And it's fairly easy when you talk about the level of getting to an MVP, a minimum viable product, or a POC, proof of concept. But then when you start scaling it, rolling it out to hundreds of thousands of users or clients, even millions, internationally, perhaps even globally, the scale of the challenge changes. And all this in a very changing landscape where API-first thinking or platforms or whatnot are taking space. We have this morning a really, really great setup of 5 speakers who will discuss this topic of scaling digital from different angles. The speeches will be around 15 to 20 minutes, after which we always have approximately 5-minute-ish to go through a couple of questions that you guys have to us. You have the opportunity to ask those questions online, and we will see them here. Let's see where the discussion takes us. But I think we'll have really interesting questions coming up about these topics. And of course, at the end of the morning, we have our keynote speaker, Sangeet Paul Choudary, who I'm very proud to be able to introduce to our Frontline Summit this year. Sangeet is the foremost thinker around platforms, API first, and platform business models in general in the world. And I will be introducing him in more detail, as I will also the other speakers during this morning. So stick around, it's going to be a really, really great and interesting morning, I promise you that. And we'll have fun together. We'll also have a break after the third speaker, 10 minutes, and then after that, of course, the last 2 ones. But without further ado, I would like to then start off our morning by introducing Ossi Lindroos, our new CEO of Solita, but not a new Solitan. I thought you had been 17 years with us, but it was 14, the correct answer. So Ossi will open up the event and have a few opening remarks and words and set the scene, and then we'll dive right into our guests. Please, Ossi.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ossi Lindroos. Many of you have seen me over the years in different roles at Solita, as a business leader, partner, or a consultant. Since the beginning of the year, I've had an honor to be the CEO, the captain of Solita. It's been quite a year. I think we all have learned new ways to work, communicate, or interact. And I would have loved to give this speech on a convention center stage. But I also love the fact that there are so many of you around the world watching us today. You are from 23 different countries, to be precise. Even though many of us are tired of the situation already, me included, there are still many silver linings in the pandemic. We commute less, we need to travel less. That frees time with our families and the closest ones. There's new skills we've learned, new ways to work and new ways to interact. And I think that we have seen also improved profitability in many organizations. For us, Solita, the past year was great. Despite the pandemic, our revenue continued to grow for almost 20%. We were able to find over 200 new colleagues last year. And this year only, up until now, we have employed over 150 Solitans. That makes us 1,100 strong organization, community in 12 cities and 6 countries all over Europe. We are operating on the areas of software engineering, data and design, strategy, as well as cloud and connectivity, all of them being strong growth areas for us. There are many customers listening to us this morning in the audience, and I want to thank you all for making this possible. Last fall, we were together in Solita Meeting Point with the theme of resilience. I'm delighted that so many organizations have had that resilience and adaptability in the crisis. There naturally are many businesses still suffering from the pandemic, but still quite many have survived rather well. For some, this has naturally been easier, while some others have had to change rapidly to even stay in the game. Quite often, the change has meant really becoming digital, for many almost overnight. When building digital solutions and services, we are far from ready yet. The digital everyday still has its challenges. But here we are today, this very morning, experiencing all this through digital capabilities. Many organizations have completely changed their ways of working. And I think we all can relate to the fact that what didn't seem possible in the past is now an everyday exercise for many of us. Therefore, it's fascinating to see in the longer perspective if we really got that productivity leap in societies and organizations because of all of this or not. That's something that time will tell. We've had the needed technologies in place for a long time. Quite often, we as human beings are in the way, our attitudes and our beliefs. Many times we know what should be done, but we don't know how and where to start. And as Peter said, our theme today is scaling digital. How we can handle that tech to human obstacle. How we can get things started, but also scaled to really bring that long-lasting impact. The pandemic is still here. It still has its grip on us. However, there starts to be clearly light at the end of the tunnel. Since at the moment, many countries and societies are planning to gradually open up. Eventually, things will normalize, to some kind of normal at least. But I still think that one thing will remain. And that thing is that our life permanently got that digital boost. That was it. That was my stories of the morning. I wish you all a great morning. Thank you all. Now back to Peter again.
Thanks, Ossi. Thanks for setting the stage. Can I pick your brain a little bit with regards to what you just said? We're talking about the profound changes that we see, and technology and the human aspect of it, the dichotomy between those two. What do you feel that drives the change? Is it technology or is it people? Or can you even say either or?
I think that we need technologies to be sort of catalysts. There needs to be new possibilities to start doing new things. Like I said in my speech, we have had all these technologies in place for a long time.
Yes.
But what we needed was we needed to be pushed sort of forward in order to take those technologies into use. But still, all of those technologies are human designed. So in the way we need those masterminds and thoughts behind it, okay, what should be possible and how could technologies be helping our everyday life?
Yeah.
And then when good enough technologies are there in place, then it's us human beings that leading the way.
It's an interesting phenomenon that the actual push was actually a third thing that I didn't even come to think of asking.
Yeah,
it was the pandemic, and now we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you, Ossi, for your opening words and setting the stage. We will get back to this topic as well, the perhaps contradiction between human and technology, if it's even a contradiction. But now it's time for our first guest speaker. I'm very happy to welcome to the stage Jukka Backlund. Jukka is Head of Operational Excellence for Technical Services at ISS Finland. Jukka has long experience in the field, both from ISS and other areas, and he is here to talk to us about how ISS has evolved their data ecosystem in the property services business. So, the stage is set, the program starts rolling, and we're good to go. Please, Jukka.
Good morning, everybody, on my behalf as well. Glad to be here. So as I said, I will talk about the data ecosystem in our business, in property services, facility services business, how it has been evolving and how the industry landscape is forming itself. Our business is very labor intensive. It's people-to-people business, and often we are not the first ones to do the digitalization, but digitalization is coming, and it's taking different types of forms as our frontliners start to use digitalization, and our customers, our end users get digitally to connect us. So about the content of the presentation, I will first tell a few words about the company, the industry to give you an idea of what is the field we are playing at, and then we move on to the places that think, because we are a facility services business, we run facilities. Then we go to the digitality in our service provision, how it is done. I will take 3 dimensions, separate in 3 dimensions to make it easier to see what kind of things are going on and happening, and then consider a little each of those and take a look at the benefits and what it means in a large corporate to be operating in one country with these processes and systems. As said, I've been working with ISS for a long period of time, and half of this time I've been responsible of processes and systems. So the field is very familiar. ISS is a multinational company. We operate in more than 30 countries. We have more than 400,000 employees, and our customers are often also multinational global companies who operate in many countries and want compliance and similar service wherever their office, their branch is located. About facility services, we provide all types of services our customers need to run their facilities: cleaning, food, technical, security, and support services. In the light blue box, I have the word integrated facility services, meaning that our services are often an integral part of our customers' business. Also meaning that our customers' service is such that we operate together with our customers, and we use the customers' data systems, and our data systems are sometimes integrated to customers' data systems to make the process flow. The purpose of the company is connecting people and places to make the world work better. So we are on business-to-business service foremost. The places that think. So if we want to make the places to think, we have to consider what is the need for the users, the end users, what is the need of the facility owner, and so on. So we have to consider the functional needs of the people who are working the world of work and the emotional side of it. And the emotional side is the one that gets us to use digital services, makes us to connect, take the first step, because the emotional thing is fun, there is something for us, and that was what runs the first connection. So how to get the places to think? Of course, it's clear we have to make them digital. In many businesses, this has been the case for a long period of time. But our surroundings, our industry has not been very digitalized. It's very diverse, very heterogeneous, and the buildings themselves have not been digital for a long period of time. Now the new buildings are digital, but still, and in the service provision, there's even more things that should be in control but are not digital. And that's what is happening in this industry at the moment. So, how to get the places to think? We use the digitality. As I said, I took here 3 dimensions. We use it on a traditional way to enhance our service provision efficiency, so that our services would be more efficient. This is the traditional ERP type of approach, where we make it smoother for that it's more efficient. Often it's also enhances customers' process, but the look is inside. Then the other approach is the smart use of smart buildings. So everybody heard about smart homes, smart buildings. As said, new buildings are very digital. They produce a lot of information. And also, there's a lot of sensoring you can add if you wish, wherever you wish. Actually, the forces that are driving the digitalization in this industry are, of course, the same as in other industries. We have this mobility. Everybody can use mobile apps. It's become everyday thing of all the people. Then we have very advanced algorithms, storing data, moving data is very cheap, and all these changes happen in our industry as well. So with the smart buildings, we can enhance the energy efficiency and the conditions and the comfort of the users in the building. And this can happen through algorithms and collecting data. The third dimension I have chosen here is the user's connectivity to the building, and to get the people connect to our services digitally, and also this way they can get the services which are important for them, which are personal for them. If you think about the colors, the light blue one is the most interesting one because we don't know yet what is happening. There is a huge need for platforms, and the big players are producing platforms and connecting themselves to buildings and offering the user information for the participant in the service provision. So there is more white space on the right side of the picture. Now to go on about the enhancing service provision, I will briefly describe the type of services we are doing. So our service is providing tasks. We provide tasks, and they have to be right and rightly timed and done efficiently. The tasks are arising from many sources. So of course we plan them, people make requests, or then the building automation system or our hub analytics can rise up tasks for us to provide. And once the task has been initiated, then it's about allocating it to the right people who has the capability, the skills to do the tasks. And once this is done, the task will be, of course, provided for the customer's satisfaction. So mostly this business, this process has been very labor intensive and done by supervisors themselves for the most part. But now when we get the digital places, we get the digitality in place, we can do this more and more through algorithms. Of course, we have to have a lot of information. We have the digital building, we have the digital building with the taxonomy of all the assets and spaces in the building on the one side, and then on the other hand, we have to have a digital picture of the service provision and everything that is connected to service provision. And this has been the part that has been lacking. But we are going there more and more, and then we are getting a real-time operative dashboards for our supervisors, and also, of course, we get a real-time internal and external reporting, like we all can today see how the pizza is coming, and now it's on the corridor, and now it's on my door. So we have to have the same type of visibility in the service provision for the most part. So the services, once they are provided, it has to happen in real time. So once we have this, we get the shared data. We can share the data, we can use it in many purposes, pricing, benchmarking, whatever. We have to have a lot of data about how industry is operating, and we'll have that data also more and more globally with the same format. And once we are there, we can more than today answer the questions: what should be delivered, when it should be delivered, and who shall deliver it. Of course, where also is often important in our business. And in future, these questions can be more and more replied by advanced algorithms, or the advanced algorithms can help a lot of the supervisors' work and shift it to more people-intensive regarding customers and the frontliners helping them, so it will change. All right, then as a second dimension, I have the smart building thing here. We use the smart building idea so that we collect the data in a hub where actually people are at one place, and we have a picture of what is happening in the building technically. And we can also collect a lot of external data, of course, weather forecast, whatever there is available for free. And then we can comply, we can unify that data and make assumptions and forecast based on it. And more that can be done digitally. But as said, we have buildings of many ages, and the old buildings don't produce much data. You can add it with the sensors, but still you are in a bit difficult phase with it, and the data is mostly handled manually by humans. More and more the buildings are then in the 2.0 situation, providing data, and there's a lot of data available. Now, but still, the data is distributed around, and it is difficult to use algorithms to handle it. But now we are getting more and more in the situation where we can predict beforehand what is happening with algorithms. We have so much data, we have so advanced learning analytics that we can do maintenance and provide services in the right time, even before we can start providing, even before people feel that they need that. For example, we can clean the spaces depending on how many people have visited there, or we can do maintenance based on the information from the systems and system parts themselves, or based on the information we have gathered concerning the faults arising and so on. So it is changing a lot. The efficiency will rise when we do it when really needed. Okay. So then the third dimension, which I mentioned to be the user's connectivity to building and its services. And the question is, of course, what is there for me? So we all connect to different kind of social networks because there is a lot of interest for us. So the same way the facility industry, the facility services has to be meaningful for people. And this is in a way the part where it would be very beneficial to know what the client, what the individual customer is appreciating, what are the preferences. With the social experience, it's often about Of course, people want to know where their peers are, where everybody is, where is my team, where is the suitable area, meeting room, whatever working space is for me, and so on. And of course, connecting to the services, requesting services, mobily, and all of that. So this is the part where there is the highest need for cooperation with various parties, because nobody is possessing all the information. It has to be gathered, there has to be a platform, and people have to be willing to use the platform. And so there is happening a lot, and as I said, we don't really know how it will go, but we will know that this will be very important in offering digital experiences and services to our customers. Then I took a brief picture about what are the benefits for all of these. So I have the 3 dimensions on the top, and then I have put facility-related benefits and then end-user-related benefits on the layers below. So price is, of course, essential. When you increase your efficiency, you are competitive, and the end user will get a lower price, and that's always a driver. But also you have to provide more value on the value side. And for buildings today and facilities today are not merely buildings with space to operate in. It's more and more a service product, and the service dimension is the one that separates various operators. So it can be much more competitive if in this facility, in this business park, you get the service your employees are need, and your employees like it. In the future, now we talk about this COVID thing while we started, and everybody is now connecting from home and so on. We know that most of us who do digital, somehow consider digital things in our work, can do it remotely. But we also know that not everything is most efficient digitally. We have to have, somebody said that you have to be at 30% if you are in my line of job, for example, so 30% should be on the office or by meeting people face to face. And in the future, therefore, the facilities must be attractive. They must lure people to come to the facility. So the facility has to offer something more than a home as a workplace. And this is where we as a service company and as an operator of facilities can do a lot, so that there is experiences you cannot have at home. There are services that are not available at home. So this is maybe one of the most important approaches in the future. Then I put something, so my position, I operate in one country, and ESS is more than 30 countries, and the business has been very diverse. And most of the companies have grown through purchasing other companies, so there is a strong local approach, and the market and the customers are also very local. But what is happening is that more and more we need the shared data, as I told before, and that's why we are more and more using shared software in each country. It might be surprising that we don't do this yet, but this business, it's not the way it has gone. So we are getting more and more common software to scale the digitality in our industry. But we still have to balance the need of local software. We have regulations, we have authorities, and also market-specific things that you have to connect to. And you cannot connect them only, by people. So you need also local software. And this is actually where Solita has been helping us a lot. So it's been very good. So this balance is also important, and of course, it's changing, but as the need of digital handling of data increases, there will be, I suspect, even more global systems on side of the shared software in this line of industry in future. So because everything will be more and more in the systems, and we will have the digital twin, the digital picture of our process covering all. So this was my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it and got some picture of how we do it in the facility services industry and what type of environment this is to leverage digitality. So thank you all. Have a nice day on my behalf. And we will have a small chat, I think, after this, so there will be some questions. I hope to see them.
Thank you, Jukka. It was really interesting, and we're getting some comments also online that it's amazing to listen to your presentation. Please sit down and have a sip of water. You've been talking for half an hour now. So.
Thank you.
And how many parallel thoughts you've awakened in the audience. We were talking earlier about this before your presentation in preparation, and also this morning before you came on stage, that since ISS is a huge group that has essentially been built by buying up companies in most of the local markets, that must be a gargantuan task in integrating all the software and technologies to get this vision that you just pictured to work.
Yeah.
How have you handled that?
It has been back and forth. You know, it doesn't happen at once. But of course, the customer is the king, and the result they require guides us, so that our customers, they require compliance, more and more similar services, similar reporting wherever they are in this global world. So then we must adapt this approach.
Yeah.
But as said, it's not been easy in our industry, and our ways of using data in different countries is still very different. But we are on that long march, and group is taking very, very strong steps on that direction.
Yeah.
So we will be there.
What would you say, and I understand that you can't have an exact answer, but sort of percentage-wise, where are you right now as with technologies provided and solutions provided by group versus locally, if we say 70-30 or 80-20 or 50-50?
Oh, it's a bit different, say, but it's coming to 50-50.
Okay.
But as you see, it's still not very far.
Yeah.
But I think in few years it will be very high. So of course all the essential parts, the parts that are in a way generic, you know, purchase to pay, order to bill, human resources, those are the ones that we try to get the market leading software from the big companies and use it efficiently.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there remains places where we have to do it locally, and we have to connect this software to the local software so that it all operates.
Absolutely.
But so the change is now getting much quicker, but still we are on the way.
Let's take one from the audience. We still have a good time here. Carolina is asking, or saying, first of all, thank you, Jukka. So I assume that your presentation was well received. The question is about space and people digitally connecting. Where does ISS see this developing further in the future? You had the light blue column and you explained that thought, but what is your vision?
Though my vision is that the places will know us.
Yeah.
Like I think it first will happen at homes because it's very safe environment to do it and give you information. But in future, the places will know us better and offer us meaningful services. And that's why, as I said, I suspect that this is where we interact with the global platforms to that people give the information on their benefit to the ones that are providing service. That will have to happen, but there is not much of that still in the proper. Of course, we have our own apps. You can do it and you can connect it, but still we can never gather that much information that there already is on the web from each of us. Absolutely. And if we could use some of that information on the benefit of our customers, that would be very helpful. So I think this is more and more, but it's not here yet, but that's what's happening.
But you can see that in, say, for example, Singapore, in really advanced new office buildings, that they are actually scarily intelligent. They know where you want to go and they suggest that to you and then take you to the whatever floor.
Yeah. I remember watching Minority Report when I was young, and I thought, wow, and now many of these features are here today.
They're true.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's funny.
Let's take another one from the audience. Erik is asking, how do you get the traditional commercial property owners and builders on track to support your journey at ISS? I guess they aren't the most digitally interested, and a lot of old systems themselves are still in place.
Yes, that's true. And there will be, because property and facility is always an asset. And the ones who owns the asset has a strong incentive to run it wisely and to have information of everything that related to the asset.
Yeah.
So there will always be information that's owned by the property owners. But companies, I think the ones driving the change are the big manufacturing companies, and on the other hand, the companies that have a lot of expert labor and who are in a way competing of the labor.
Yeah.
So then when you compete of the labor, you have to offer them the best working environment and something to make them happy.
Yeah.
And this drives to change so that the property or the facility eventually it's owned by somebody, but in here as well, the end user will drive the change, the need will drive the change.
So you're really looking at the profound competitive advantage that the owner will be able to supply to their client.
And once people want to be in facility, they are ready to pay for it, a premium, and that's what's driving the change. But still there is a lot of thinking that I only let you this space and use it as you will, and it's your, up to you what kind of services you think. But that's not the future. Like you referred to Singapore, the modern facilities. There is everything available, like a big city.
Okay, Jukka, thank you very much for your presentation and also the answers. I think the answers were really enlightening and opened up the scene a little bit more. And with those words, I think it's time, I don't think, I know, it's time to move on to our next speaker. Next we have up Carl Schnackenburg, Head of Data and Analytics at Skandia in Sweden. And Carl will join us to give his presentation about Skandia's story on how they have used the power of automation to develop their data platform. And it's an interesting story. Really ambitious targets and goals, which I also believe Carl is going to share with us. So let's connect to Sweden, and Carl, the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Carl Schnackenburg. I work as a head of data and analytics in Skandia, and I will tell you about the story we have, the journey that we have in building up our new data platform. And we can also say that we are trying to ignore or blow up this old project triangle. I will tell you more about that. First, a few words about myself and my team. I've been working 25 plus years within information management, most years as a consultant, and last 1.5 years here at Skandia. I am truly believe the amazing things that can be done in teams, and that goes for sports, that goes for music, that goes for work. And in the spare time, I like to play music, so that's what I do when I am not working. My team consists of 9 great individuals, data management professionals, and with some consultants to help us as well. And we are responsible for data governance, running self-service BI, and also the business owners of analytics here at Skandia. And we're part of finance, so I'm reporting to the CFO. Today, I'll walk you through the following topics. We have first a brief introduction to Skandia, then I'll tell you more about our journey and the thoughts that we have used in this journey, and the next things that we will do in the coming. And first then, Skandia, an old company. We started 1855, been around quite a while, and we have background in insurance, and these days we used to be a global company, offices all around the world. Today we are only situated in Sweden, and we're roughly around 2,000 employees. And we are owned by our customers, which I think is good, and because that makes us, if we do good things, we are doing good things to our customers, which I think is it's a nice thing. And we also don't need to spend so much time worrying about the shareholder value and the quarterly results. So we can focus more on the long-term things and do good things in the long term to benefit our customers and owners. We've distributed quite a substantial amount to our customers every year, and we do that on a yearly basis, which is good. We are in traditional asset management. We have also a bank, and we are working on fund savings and health insurance and life insurance and pensions, of course. So, enough about Skandia then. Our journey, all journeys have a start. And to simplify it a little bit, you can say that it started out when we had this data quality risk that was an issue that we needed to address, and that was logged and found its way to the CFO's table. A little bit simplistic, because we also needed an upgrade of our analytical ecosystem and the data warehousing that we have and had. And so we started out as a part of a finance transformation program, but we also needed updates on financial systems and ways of working, etc. So we started working with information supply for these parts. And to address and close this risk, it was decided that we need a new analytical platform. And this platform has been named after a little green man famous from the movies, Yoda. And that stands for your data is available, or as the guy would phrase it, is available your data is, in a strange way he phrases things. But things that we thought was important when we started out was that we need to have a clear game plan. We need to have goals and what we want to achieve with this platform. And one of the things was that we wanted it to be configurable, not so much programming as being able to, using tools in a clever way, being able to configure more than the program. We know that there are, of course, things that needs to be programmed anyway, but still keep that at a minimum. We also needed to have both when we started and now and onwards, to keep in mind the balance and the balance with balancing things like long-term and short-term, balancing things that that's the structure that we need to set in place, but we can't be so structured as we said, so we get rigid and not being able to have a certain amount of freedom where we can do things in a good way, as well as the things that a balance between things that we need to do in forms of regulatory reporting and other things that we need to do, and some things that or the business wants us to do to keep a better analytical ecosystem, so for better decisions and better service to our customers, etc. So, and I mentioned before when I started that we want to kind of ignore this old, I would say, project triangle where you say we have the costs, we have the time, we have the quality and functionality, and you can't really move any of those without impacting the others. And we believe in working smart and using good tools. We think that we can deliver both faster to high quality and to lower cost. And why faster? Faster because the business will have lots of requirements that we want to fulfill, and we can't let them wait forever. We need to have certain pace in delivering things to them within our space. And the quality, of course, is high quality is of course paramount, because we need to have trust, and we all know that if you don't have trust in data, you stop using it. And to build trust takes time, and to breaking it is actually goes pretty fast. So we need to have consistent high quality in the things that we do. And we can't really, as we are not a huge company, we can't bring in hordes of programmers and doing this for us, and when that increasing the costs. But we need to keep costs low, and of course that's where automation and the configuration comes in. into play, that we need to do this in a smart way, using smart tools. And to be fair, I mean, we all know that these types of initiatives and projects hasn't really, it's not necessarily that the success rate is so high, because we all know, probably you also have experiences from failed projects, at least failing to deliver the value that was set out from the start with, or it takes longer to do that, or takes more money to do that. So, which makes it's a little bit humbling, I would say. But we have, when we started this, we thought about a few things that we have seen as problems before, and we're trying to address them as early as possible. And so we come up with these 4 frameworks. And by frameworks, I mean processes combined with technology and tooling and roles. So we identified these 4 frameworks. And the first being that we're calling from requirements to design. And that is how we capture the requirements, how we work in an agile way in cross-functional teams, how we're using the backlog and all that. And we're using Azure DevOps to keep track on the backlog and that progress. And the next one is from what we call from design to release. And here we're using the Agile Data Engine, ADE, from Solita, to be able to configure the flow of information in the analytical ecosystem. So we need to, when we bring data in, how we again configure things and using a model-driven approach and not programming, but so we using models to drive the data into data vault models and all that, and to where we can deliver data to our internal customers. The next thing is the testing, and we've seen data warehousing project failing in testing. Either testing is done too late, or it's done in a very manual, cumbersome way, which takes just too much time or effort. So you don't really do it in the way it should be, I think. So here we're working with a newly founded company called X-Automate to be able to automate these testings in a good way. And it's focused on testing analytical ecosystems. So we can have predefined things to test that we could configure and run those tests. So now I think we have more than 1,000 tests that we can automatically run through just by pushing a button and get the results, and to see that we have this high quality, the quality that we expect. The last thing is the data catalog. We're working with Ab Initio, and the data catalog is a place where we can collect the metadata and from the systems, from the ADE, from modeling tools, and so we can capture all this metadata and for people to look into, to have questions, if they have questions regarding the data assets that's in the system. And also great functionality is the lineage that we can use, and we can stand in reports and drill through to the source systems and see what transformations has been done. Where does this information come from? That's in the report. And we can also do it vice versa, so we can, from a source system, we can see, okay, where does this data go in this ecosystem? So it's a really good tool for that. And it's good for regulatory purposes as well as business purposes. So when we talk about this, lots of things is focusing on how we onboard data into this platform. And of course, it all starts with requirements, and we use Azure DevOps for that. We're using Colruyt as an information modeling tool, where we have captured definitions and then terms and using that. And then later on, we bring it into the ADE platform, where we can, using configuration and creating the code necessary to move the data into this logical parts of this information delivery system. And then lastly, we use X-Automate to test that things are in the right way. And I mentioned again the data catalog and the place where we can look at the data assets and lineage, and also can get the business can if they have questions around data, who should they ask? What the mapping rules and data quality rules that has been applied to this data assets. So it's a window into this ecosystem. So then, what's next? I mean, we haven't completed all those things I mentioned before, but we still have things that we want to move ahead from, and that we have planned to do. And the thing that we want to do, and we will launch this after summer if everything goes according to plans, and that is to launch the first information train in Skandia. And train is of course taken from the SAFE methodology, and SAFE is something that is used within Skandia, so we would like to get aboard on that as well and use the same principles for running this initiative in the future as well. And we need, again, to do this in a streamlined ways when we capture requirements, when we, to ensure consistency, to do this in a repetitive way, in a structured way, so we can, when a new requirements come, we know exactly what to do. So we just can dimension the teams, and we can have the right way of doing it. And we also need to integrate those things, and we need to integrate the processes with the tools and the tools with the tools, so we could connect those components in the CI/CD pipeline. And then our belief is that we will have a fully functioning, transparent, business-driven information train where we can see how the prioritization has been done, who's done it, and also following up on the progress. And so, and we're using popular thing in software development, this shift left, where we're actually trying to shift left the testing and do it as early as possible. And when we capture requirements, we already there pick up things about the expected results. So given this, when we do this, then this should be the answers that we're getting. And by doing this, we can move through these sprints in a good way, and we can test things much earlier than we can do it in an automated way, which again doesn't take so much time. So we can actually do it with the changes we do. We can test it immediately and not having to wait, and we can get the results and work with that. And so the last thing is again just a picture of how this process is, the software development lifecycle process, and of course that's a common method for software development. How we use both this integration and the requirements capturing in this process to be as efficient as possible and to deploy things after it's been quality assured. So thanks a lot. I hope that you have gotten hopefully some inspiration or confirmation. If you're on the same track as we, then hopefully you can get some confirmation that, or at least some food for thoughts and things. And if you want to, if you have other questions you want to hook up using LinkedIn, that's fine. I have a name that's quite easily recognizable, so you will find me there. And I know that we have a few minutes to questions, so I guess Peter will have these questions, and I will try to answer them as honestly and as good as I can. So thanks a lot for listening.
All right. Thank you, Carl. Our next speaker is our very own Anni Ojajärvi, who's one of Solita's business ethnographers. That's an interesting title, right? Anni is here to talk to us about the human aspect of technology. Her precise topic is human adaptability to technology and how we actually become users, perhaps even addicts in some ways. It's a topic quite often overlooked when implementing technologies and taking them to scale, and we all have lots of different experiences and examples of that scenario, both fortunately but also quite often unfortunately. Anni has profound background in this. She's done her PhD thesis around the similar topic, and she's also the founder and chairperson of Humans Helsinki. I wonder if the sister organization is Inhumans, but maybe we'll ask that from Anni. So, without further ado, Anni, the stage is yours for the next 20 plus minutes, and then we have again some time for questions. Please, join us, Anni.
Thank you, Pietro. A couple of weeks ago, I was jogging with my friend, and I saw that she had really nice headphones with her, and I asked about them. She actually said that the old ones were better, because these ones, it was really hard to use. The old ones, you only had to plug it in and play. But with the new ones, she frustratedly said, now I needed to download an app, trying to figure out how it works, just to use headphones. Can you imagine? I just wanted to have nice looking headphones. Now I have to learn how to use them. Headphones. From everything that we have heard today, it is apparent that the superpower of tomorrow is the adaptability to technology and digitalization, and all the opportunities that it will bring to organizations and individuals. But it is hard sometimes, as we saw, and it takes time and effort. So we need to have a really good reason for it. Especially today, when there are new tools and frameworks come every month, and even the ones that we're using are updated all the time. This consistent battle with adopting new technology should be interest all organizations that have tools, have services, or even employees. And also real understanding of why technology is sometimes hard to humans should be also a key to solving a lot of business problems. So my background is in social sciences, and I'm a business ethnographer here in Solita. What it means is that I listen, I observe, I make observations about human life, their practices, wishes, hopes, and try to ponder what makes people think and act like they do. And also how all the services and products and technology is connected to our lives, our everyday lives. This will take me every now and then to unfamiliar places. Sometimes it's a factory, sometimes it's just a library. And when I did my PhD, I went to military just to understand how young men and women health behave and how it's socially and culturally constructed. But today I'm also a business consultant. So I just test how companies can raise their revenue, figure out how to prove their business in the future, or value proposition in the future, just by understanding, listening, and being in the world a little bit more. I think it's really hard to understand people if you don't understand all the technology that they are surrounded with. I think it's the same as if you're trying to figure out teenagers without looking what they're doing with their phones or online. And this is relevant to end users, employees, and B2B perspective. As a sociologist, the difference for me is only the power relations. And to make a point, we only have to think about how addicted we are to our iPhones. But I have never heard anybody being addicted to their CRMs. I want to make 3 points today about adaptability to technology and how we become users. First point, we actually don't want to become a user. Second, our community has a strong role if we do adopt technology. And a third one, tech builds value only through our lives. Let's look at the first one. We don't actually want to become a user. Let me start by example. I have studied the health behavior, but I think it's interesting that people actually don't health behave. They live their life, they eat, sleep, may do some yoga or have sex, but they don't see themselves as health behaving. They're just living their life and it has impact on their health. I think same is true to technology. We are not using technology, we don't want to be users of technology, but we want to live a good life or have some other goal, be efficient at our work or have just leisure time. And it has impact, but only through some technology. We might need them, but we're not users of technology. We are humans. Because why it is hard to adopt new technology, it is because it takes time and effort. It actually breaks our routines. And it probably we will feel clumsy for a while. And it will bring us a lot of questions, not only those that are related to how can I use it, but also, is this really worth my time? What if I just can't learn this? What if I'm just too old for this? What if I break something? Or my personal favorite, why can't I just use the old version? I understand the tech develops, but can you just leave the ones I'm using alone? It's easier to become a user if it fits to your current life, your ways of working, and your own goals. Then it feels that it's worth the effort of changing. It's easier to become a user if the technology helps you to reach your own goals and not trying to be your goal. We have good and bad examples for this. The good one that I have is Aura. Not because it will track everything I do, but simply because it helps me with my own goal, to have a good night's sleep. I barely remember it, but once a day, it reminds me of my own goal. But it's just not only me or the grandparents struggling with this, but I see everybody struggling with this, with the Wi-Fi's or internet connections when we are remotely working. And somehow, it just isn't as easy as they promised us it would be. Then there's a small fractions of you. I call you lucky ones the tech enthusiastic. Sometimes I feel that the world has been built around you, and in many times it is. But I have seen the light in your eyes when you have a technical problem that you will figure it out, or when you find out a new language, how to use it, or when you argue with your colleagues, what is the best way to solve the problem in Slack. I think you have superpowers and energy for digital scaling. But I think that we need to figure out together how to do it in a way that the most of us don't need to be embarrassed or frustrated that we're not able to adopt a specific technology. I know that your perspective is bigger than just the users. I know that some of you might think that you don't even have users. But I would say all the solutions, services and products, and anything that goes beyond that and beneath that have users, even if the tech itself wouldn't. Many times we don't adopt technology because we see the value in it, but because others see the value. This is because humans are profoundly social creatures, and the meanings that we give are socially conformed in our society. And because of this, the whole process of adapting tech is also social. How your friends are using technology affects the way you are using it and the attitudes that you have. You might even have some kind of unofficial norms around technology and which is better and which is worse and what are we using. And this is why our community sets the standards to tech adoption. And it's easier to become a user if the community says to you that it's worth the effort. We only have to figure out that it also has social norms and excuses of behavior. Why would anybody use Facebook if nobody else would be there? And with the CRM, if you see that your colleagues are not using it, how much easier it is not to use it. I have found out how community helps adopt technology. Myself, I had an intensive argumentation with my sister for 25 years if Mac is objectively intuitive to use and easy. 5 years ago, I gave up and switched to Mac. Not because my sister was right, but because I got a new job where it seems that everybody had one. Nobody said anything to me, but I kind of just wanted to belong to a group. And unspoken practices are many times even stronger than those that we're speaking out loud. But I don't see, and today I have to say, if somebody says that Mac is intuitive and easy to use, I might nod. But if I feel different, I keep my mouth shut. And that's how the social sphere kind of works. But I don't see this as a problem. I see that as a fundamentally human thing. We have shared practices. We build common ground and reality with these shared practices and meanings that we create. And I think in the business world, these meanings, these social communities and the meanings they create are not analyzed enough or taken seriously enough when figuring out adoption of technology or business problem whatsoever. It is easier to use to become a user if your community or organization supports you. Not only by adopting technology, but being vulnerable, because that is what change requires from us. I saw a lot of emotions in adopting technology, thrill and excitement, and also embarrassment. We don't want to lose our face in front of our colleagues or peers. But I think the most interesting part is when the technology, people start to make sense out of it. They start to invent their own practices and ways of using it. And this is not through manuals or training sessions, which are important, but their own practices, own lives, own figurization, how it works. And here is where the real value is. I think a good example is peer-to-peer music sharing. The file sharing technology originally was for file sharing only online. So remote access to digital files, but it was adopted illegally by humans. And as we know, it kind of disrupted the whole music industry. Not because of the technology, but because how people perceive that and make sense out of it. So I say that what we learn is that tech adoption is not one-way street or not passive, but active, co-creating, collaboration, meaning-making, and everything that life is in human is. And the value is not created only in companies. And more, when we go to the future, it's built by communities, people that figure out how the tech works and finding out how it is, where the value is, where are the meanings. And I think companies should co-create technology even more than they do today. As we know, half of the CRM and ERP projects go over time or over budget, and they fail to meet their goals that organizations have to them. And I do think that you should and can blame those promises that promise you fast adoption or quick change, because that's not true. But companies need to also understand, really understand, that implementation of technology can start from top to down and hope just it sticks. Even with the most desirable tech, people need time and ways to make the tech our own. And many times we just don't have it. And there's no way to figuring out the technology. I know that I look things from human perspective because I'm a business ethnographer. I know in a big MDM project, there are many more layers than the human users layer. But for me, I start from human understanding. Then there's data analytics, which enriches and analyzes the human behavior, concept planning, and then I think quite big technological development comes last. So how can we do it? But if we look at it from technology perspective, it looks a little bit different. And it starts from the technology. I understand the facial recognition start from the technology, not with the user. Understanding how can we do that? Is it possible? And then later on the user comes, and maybe even the ethical questions. I understand that. I understand also that the company's mind, the size of the practical challenge and investment often drives the development. But I think the key here is to create and figure out the value that we create together. And from my perspective, I would love to have a common ground and more common ground and common language. I see these all like languages, not English, Swedish, Finnish, but I see that there's academic language, and then there's management consultancy language, service design language, and tech language. Also, there's subcategories of these. But I think we need to start to build common language. This means, in many times, that human and cultural interpreters like me need to have a proper tech literacy. But also, for the tech enthusiastic, they might need a little bit more of human science behavior understanding. For example, in the future, strategy without tech, without really understanding the opportunities and realities of tech, I think it's naive. And I think that is where you all come in, what I actually want us both to come in. So the future superpower is not adaptability, but rethinking and creating technology together. If we can combine tech, human, and culture, I think it opens up endless possibilities. This means that tech enthusiastic see that their role it's really important figuring out the technology in the future. But companies have to understand humans holistically and continuously, and not just users along the way, the line in the last one. And also we need to figure out the common language and start to create common culture. But I don't think that it is a question of how we become users, but how we become humans and how we can help technology to come together with the human side.
All right. Thank you, Anni. Very insightful and very interesting. We're getting some comments also on your presentation from the audience. But before we dive in to other thoughts that you awakened, I would really like to hear from you your opinion on the same question that I asked Ossi this morning, setting the stage for the day or for the morning. What do you feel that actually drives this change? Is change driven by technology, or is it driven by humans? Or is it the third aspect, the pandemic that all of a sudden forced us to do something. How do you see this?
I think it's a really good question. And I think Ossi was right. The human part is really important there. But also, like I said, technology is sometimes hard. Sometimes we need pandemic to actually kind of push it. But I don't see them as either or questions. I see as the rounding, like starting with like the human side is one thing. But in many times we need to start with the technology side and like how can we do this? And I am always like I think it's really funny because tech enthusiastic people ask me like, I have solution, can you hand me the problem? And I understand that. But it is hard to start with that too. So I think combining that and being close together and understanding each other, maybe that's the question. Being close enough together.
Yeah. But do you think that the human brain is wired, for this world? Technology development is so fast, and the possibilities that it opens up, the new thing that I mentioned in the opening remarks, happens constantly. How do we keep up, or do we even need to keep up?
I think the last question is good. Do we actually need to keep up, and who needs to keep up with what? I think we have so many different things that maybe we need to figure out what is good, what is actually things that I need to learn, just in order for understanding technology, helping my world. But also we need to, I see that the future is also like more focused on the technology that you will choose, and maybe a limit if you're talking about younger people, also being able to, and understandable that all that goes with the technology, it's not all positive. But maybe coming a little bit back and understanding when we're using it and when we're kind of having the thought of not using it at all.
Yeah. What about society then? I mean, the individual is one thing, then the collective is the other thing.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can keep up, or will this be an endless sprint from now on? Actually, an ever increasing, ever increasing in difficulty, an endless sprint of trying to keep up with legislation. Well, that's sort of a technical, fairly easy part still, but social norms and behaviors in groups. How do you see that happening?
And I see.
Or are we heading towards a wall?
It's hard to talk about society as a whole.
Yeah.
There will be some people that I see that maybe the one problem that could be that some of us are really up there and trying and figuring out and having all this technology, and then there's another part of the society that lacks all these skills.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key question: how to kind of keep everybody. But of course, the technology will be there, and the legislation and human kind of goes a little bit later and slowly.
But how, as a practitioner in projects with in client work that you do, how do you see what's the biggest stumbling block? Where does it why do we always fail, or not always, but quite often? It's difficult. Is it the language that you were talking about, or is it the sort of sheer amount of work, task that you just don't have time for anything else? You just sort of execute, or what do you run into?
I think it's about the language a lot. Of course, it's also like what is the project about? How to bring human cultures into project that kind of feels that it doesn't need that. So it's like super focused in order to be efficient, but then maybe we kind of miss something along the way. So maybe kind of collaboration is one key, I would say.
Let's see, we have some comments and questions coming on here. Antti is asking, could companies be more open in identifying key problems to allow for change at both community and individual level, even with the help of technology?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Check.
Check. Yeah, I think the vulnerability that I raised, I think that's something that we don't actually talk when we talk about tech. We don't talk about emotion that is involved to tech. We don't actually even talk about the community that is connected to tech. We kind of, when we talk about users, we talk about individual people trying to figuring it out. But I think communities and technology should understand, like, go these puzzles too, because we're not just rational thinkers,
No.
even though we would like to feel that we are. But still, like taking the whole messy world and whole human world and kind of being vulnerable and be acceptable. And as if you look at the how people learn, what is the environment for organization to have a learning environment?
Yeah.
You need to have a space and to be yourself and being emotionally like in a safe place.
Yeah. So what do you feel is the missing piece? Let's. You mentioned a couple of times that no one's, which I really love, no one is addicted to the CRM system in their company. But what is the missing piece, do you feel, in companies trying to, or not trying to, but implementing different systems or technologies? You know, we get the trainings, and then there are help clinics and whatnot. Of course, also your daily need forces you to use that. What would be the one thing that by which we could somehow speed this process up and make tech adaptation less painful?
I would say like one example. We actually did instructions for using our GRPD, like the process. And how we did it was we talked to our lawyers for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And then we kind of make it really nice and easy looking. So also like it is a really interesting part to actually, it looks like somebody have thought about you.
Yeah.
Somebody actually listens to you when you go there before you have the CRM. They are actually like, how are you actually working? Can I look for one day or 2 hours? And then I can figure out that you're actually not using it in a way that you're actually talking, that if you're just saying how are you using the CRM.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key thing. Also looking, understanding, and maybe have instructions that kind of you can see like, oh, somebody actually understood me.
Yeah.
Even though it's still hard.
Yeah. Okay. We still have time for a quick one. It's a long one, but let's see if we can get to it. I skipped the intro, but do you have any favorite tools or methods to do this implementation in different stages of design and development and the development process?
Like methods is a good question. Even though my title, which I love, is business ethnographer, but still, I don't think it's about methods. I think it's about approaching humans holistically.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually, if you go to university, there's not like methods-based like division.
No.
And I think that's one problem that we have. Like, are we doing interviews? Are we doing ethnography? But I think we just have to have a right approach.
Yeah. Okay.
So sorry, no, no tools, no methods.
Yeah. Well, if we had, I guess it would be easier.
Yeah.
But hey, thank you very much for your super interesting presentation and insightful answers. And now, guys, I think the next program is a 10-minute break. So have a bio break, go get some more fresh coffee, send that email, but be sure to be back in 10 minutes because we have still some really interesting stuff coming up. And I promise you that you will not be disappointed when you join us for the rest of the morning. So in 10 minutes, let's get back and continue. Thank you.
Zeros and ones. Random, irrelevant. But when you combine them, the only limit is our imagination. Let's get to it. Code it. Engineer it. What are you waiting for?
All right. Welcome back. I hope all 619 of you are still there. Now we will dive into the interesting and exciting world of API-first thinking and platform business models and platform economy. The API-first thinking is prevalent almost in every business, and no matter how much we see ourselves as a platform ourselves or not, it is something that we have to learn to live with. We have to be able to either be one or coexist with platforms. And we will start by taking a technology deep dive into the API world. And our first speaker comes from Belgium. Dries van Marke is a technical architect and for application integration with Colruyt Group, Belgium's biggest retail and wholesale group. Dries will open up how they have created a API management in a service-oriented application environment. And as with everyone else, Dries will be available for a question or two after his speech. So let's dive into the API world with Dries. Please, Dries, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, my name is Dries van Marken and I'm the technical architect for application integration in Colruyt Group. Since I joined Colruyt Group, I took up different roles like software development, application management, also in different domains. In 2011, Colruyt Group started a new integration team. That was to define new guidelines and a tool set for integration and to embed integration more in the organization. I joined that team and since a few years I'm the technical architect in that team. Today I'm going to talk about how we integrated APIs in our service-oriented architecture. Colruyt started as a bakery in 1928 but evolved later to a wholesale and a discounter, and then even later to a family of activities, which is now called the Colruyt Group. The Colruyt Group is active in Belgium, France, and Luxembourg. Retail is still our most important activity, but Colruyt is also active in printing domain and energy. For instance, we have a large participation in the offshore wind farms. In our retail, Colruyt tries to guarantee the lowest prices, and that can only come with lowest costs. To make the difference, Colruyt has always focused on process improvements and work simplification. A lot of these improvements are based on automating our processes. So, in the 60s, Colruyt already purchased a mainframe to process our punch cards that were used to identify articles. We were also the first in Belgium to use barcodes in our complete supply chain. The department in Colruyt Group that supports all these automations is called Business Processes and Systems. This department has enterprise architects, IT architects, solution analysts, and also software developers. All these employees are located in Belgium, France, but also in India. We have a big department. This department is responsible for the support of hardware and software running in our 2 data centers. The evolution of integration followed a typical path in Colruyt Group. We started with integrating our mainframe applications directly to each other with shared database. Later on, we start using sockets to communicate to each other. As long as the number of our applications was quite small, that was manageable. But after a while, this became a problem. Database changes needed to be planned, as each change could have an impact on several applications. And although the mainframe was still our major platform, the number of other applications was growing. This led to a number of different interactions like CORBA, TCP sockets, FTPs, and after a while it became unmanageable. To keep it more under control, we first introduced a middleware layer. Later, we evolved to a service-oriented architecture. In the early 2000s, Colruyt Group took a first attempt to keep our integrations under control. We divided our landscape in building blocks. Each building block was meant to be able to exist independent from the other building blocks. So we wanted to replace the implementation of a building block without impacting our other building blocks. The communication between these building blocks needed to pass over a middleware layer, and our shared databases were not accepted anymore. This middleware layer was a hub and spoke model custom built in Colruyt Group. All our applications were connecting to a central component, which was IBM MQ as transport, and we defined also a format that could be understood by all our platforms. And this worked quite well. even at this moment, the system is still used with millions of transactions a day. However, after a while, some issues became clear. The first one was that our building blocks were actually a bit too small for the technical possibilities of that time. For instance, publish subscribe, that was not supported well, and we ended up with some services that needed interactions in both directions. So that made that our building blocks were not independent of each other anymore. One building block really needed the other one and vice versa. Another important issue was that we started introducing packages. In the past, we always were using our own code because in that time there weren't a lot of vendors creating general usable software, but we realized after a while, okay, now we see that vendors are also creating good softwares and we can use them. So we started introducing them, but these softwares couldn't integrate with our middleware framework because it was custom built. So we needed to do different things. And at this time, the system is deprecated, so we don't introduce new services anymore. And we also start actually considering to actively migrate these services. Even with these building blocks, we still had a traditional modular architecture where we didn't have a lot of flexibility and where the components were tightly coupled to each other. So we wanted to change this, and we worked towards a service-oriented architecture where we had black boxes then didn't impact other components when they changed. So instead of having a puzzle, a traditional puzzle where we have only one option, we went for a tangram puzzle in which building blocks can be used to lay down several figures. First, we started with defining the enterprise integration layer for our service-oriented architecture. Instead of having building blocks, we divided our landscape and capabilities. We also introduced different categories of services, each having its own characteristics. We also decided to only use standard contracts in most situations. In case of synchronous services, we use REST services and Open API specification for the description. In case of SOAP services, we use the WSDL. We have also a lot of asynchronous services, and to describe these, we use the Async API specification. And recently, we also decided to deprecate the use of SOAP services. Another important component in our enterprise integration layer is the enterprise service bus. It's not used in all integrations, but when applications are able to use the standard contracts, we don't think it's really necessary to use the ESB always. We use it mainly when the standard contracts are not possible. For instance, when connecting to applications like SAP that can't support SOAP services or REST services, we use our enterprise service bus. We also use it when we want to quickly make a bridge between two applications. With the introduction of the service-oriented architecture, we also have introduced a clearly defined governance process. For this process, we defined the life cycle of a service with several activities and also deliverables for different roles. It starts with an architect identifying the services, the solution analyst defining the requirements until the go live of a service, and afterwards even the deprecation and retirement of that service. For each phase in the life cycle, the required deliverables are defined. For instance, in the design phase, we want that a valid contract must be delivered. Now, to guarantee the quality of the deliverables, some checkpoints are added to the phases. And a central review board validates these deliverables for that phase. We have checkpoints for the architecture, the design, and also for the testing phases. Of course, times are changing, and in the last years, we bumped onto some limitations of our service-oriented architecture. We see new types of devices that needed to interact with our applications. So we needed to set some next steps. In the past, we had mostly traditional web applications. But with the rise of these new devices, we started to encounter some other types of applications. We have mobile applications that allow customers to create an order or even to pay in the stores. We have also mobile apps for our employees in the stores to, for instance, check the stock of some goods. We are also switching to single-page applications instead of our traditional web applications. So we realized that these applications have different requirements and that our enterprise integration layer was not sufficient anymore to meet these requirements. So we started a program called Mobile Readiness to give an answer to these requirements. And the objectives of this program were, first, to improve the exposability towards new channels and partners. We also wanted to improve the agility of the integrations towards the front ends, and we wanted to improve the management of our APIs. In this program, we have worked on different fronts. Next to our enterprise integration layer, we introduced the front-end integration layer. So we introduced new categories of web services with other characteristics than the ones in the enterprise integration layer. We have also worked on tooling with the introduction of our API management platform, and we have worked on our governance. An API management platform has typically following components. At the bottom, we see the administration portal, where API providers manage their APIs and where the life cycle is governed. On top, we see the developer portal, where consumers can find information about API, they can register for using the APIs, and where they also can find a community to discuss about the APIs. In the middle, we have the API gateway. This is the runtime component of the platform. All API transactions pass over the gateway to protect them and to monitor the APIs. Now, when looking at an API management platform, we started looking at components that we already had in-house. Now, for our enterprise integration layer, we were using web methods since 2011. We have the web methods integration server for our enterprise service bus. We have trading networks for the B2B integration, and we were also using the BPM of web methods. So when looking at an API management platform, we first looked at the stack of web methods. At that time, Software AG just started a new API gateway project, which was matching our requirements. Even looking at the features and comparing them with other products, we saw that there weren't a lot of difference with, for instance, IBM API Connect or API-G. So we went for the web methods API management stack. In our case, that gave for the API management portal two products. We first use CentraSite, which is the API catalog, and it also keeps track of the lifecycle of our APIs. And we also have API Gateway user interface in which the policies of the APIs are defined. The combination pushes our APIs to the API Gateway. In the middle, we have the API Gateway from Web Methods, which is the runtime component of the platform, and where we check API-specific policies. This can be access control, caching, throttling. All policies can differ for each API. We have also some general policies like SQL injection, DDoS attack protection. Software AG has a component in API Gateway that can also give that features, but in Colruyt Group, we're relying on F5 because that was already in-house for other protection, so we decided to keep on using that. And then at last, we have the Web Methods API portal, that can be used for the web methods API consumers. We must admit at this moment we don't have this running yet because we were working in steps and we didn't got there yet. But on our next roadmap, starting in next financial year, we will introduce that API portal. At runtime, the API gateway applies several policies to the incoming transactions. Policies for protecting the APIs, policies for monitoring the APIs. Now, this monitoring can just go from measuring the transactions, but it also monitors the number of faults or the average response time in a period of time. That monitoring can also create alerts. In our case, we have configured the system to send out SNMP traps, and these are caught by HP OMI, the operation manager that is used in Colruyt Group. We have also several quality of service policies, for instance, throttling, schema validation, and caching. Now, to define these policies, we have a user interface, and that is built around the flow going from the request received from the client until the response that is sent back to the client. And in this flow, we have different stages where we can define policies. We have, for instance, a stage where we can define the identification and authorization policies. We have a stage where we can configure global policies which are applied to all APIs. In our case, we have, for instance, configured that all transactions need to be monitored. An important capability of the API gateway is taking care of security. Together with the introduction of our API management platform, we have worked on security. In the past, when we were using traditional web applications, we were more relying on basic authentication. And with application-to-application integration, that is possible. But now, with the mobile applications and the single-page applications, and even partners, this basic authentication isn't safe enough anymore. So we introduced new guidelines to work with OAuth on our platform. We use ISAM, the IBM Security Access Manager, as identity and access management system. Clients request access tokens from the ISAM and add them to the request. Now, these access tokens are actually meant for the API resources. And to avoid that the client parses the access token, the client only receives an opt-out token from ISAM in our case. This also prevents that clients can leak the content of that access token. So this even helps in security. Now, the client forwards this token to the API gateway in the API request call. Now, the API resource needs, of course, to have the complete access token. The API gateway will look up the JOT token by calling the introspection endpoint of ISAM. And in the actual request to the API resource server, the opt-out token is replaced by that JOT token. And to avoid a lookup for each call, the combination opt-out token, JOT token is cached. And this helps our performance. Another important capability of the API management platform is monitoring and measurement. All the measured information of our API platform is sent to a central Elasticsearch cluster. In Kibana, we have then built several dashboards that give insights about behavior of our APIs. This is information about the transactions, like the number of invocations, the response time, the success rate. We have also information if alerts are violated. For instance, if the number of faults in a period exceeds a configured value, or if the average response time exceeds a specific limit, then we will have specific events in our dashboards. It also gives information about, for instance, the efficiency of our configured caching. Next to the API management platform, we also worked on governance. When we started the SOA governance in Colruyt Group, the focus was really on the quality of services. This led to a rather heavy process with centralized checkpoints. And we realized that for the APIs and the front-end integration layer, this wasn't a good fit. For some APIs, the speed of delivery is more important than the quality. The complete centralized governance was not necessary for all types of services. For some, a quality check in a team can be sufficient. So, depending the type of service, we have different variants of governance. For the core services, we think that the quality is still important and that the checkpoints can stay completely centralized. However, for non-reusable APIs and the front-end integration layer, the speed of delivery is more important and the governance is completely decentralized. The development team is responsible for guarding the quality. And in the middle, we have reusable APIs for which the governance is partially decentralized. The architecture checkpoint is still centralized to be able to challenge the category of the API. But once that is approved, we can work with a decentralized governance for the other checkpoints. To speed up the governance, we also automate parts in the life cycle. We are still improving the process, so what I'm describing is the to-be situation, although several parts are already realized. We have created a Gradle plugin to support the building and deploying of APIs. The beauty of that Gradle plugin is that it can be used on the local workstation of the developer, but also in the Jenkins pipeline. So how it begins? We create an open specification file. In Colruyt Group default, we work contract first. So this is a manual step. However, in some situations, mainly in the front-end integration layer, we allow code first, where the contract is generated from the code. And that is then automatically uploaded to the API gateway user interface. In that API gateway user interface, the policies are added to the API. Each API has different policies, so this is a step that is difficult to automate. However, with global policies and templates, we try to use some easiness for the developer. After adding the policies, the API policies are exported and pushed to Git. A build is created, the API is validated. Here we use Spectral as an API linting tool, and a readable documentation is generated from the contract. After everything is finished, the build is pushed to Artifactory. Once the implementation of the backend is ready, the API must be tested. So we will deploy our API definitions to our API gateway and test, and then the developers and testers can execute their tests. And finally, if all tests are okay, we can go live and we can deploy the API to the production API gateway. And now the API is operational. So this was in short the story how Colruyt Group has managed to fit APIs of the front-end integration layer into our service-oriented architecture. I hope you enjoyed the story. And now I'm ready for some questions.
Hello, Dries. Do we have connection to Belgium? We do. Yes. Hi.
Yes.
Thank you for the deep dive into the world of APIs. I think this is a very, very fundamental thing to understand, also for the context of our next speaker, Sangeet, who will talk about platforms and platform business model and economy. But Dries, I would like to ask you, you have this state-of-the-art, very developed API platform in use. What is the next step, and what will you use it for?
Well, the next step, first we will continue with building further out, because at this moment it's still partially implemented. But after that, we think we see more and more integrations with the cloud applications. And there, because most of our environment is still on premise, there we see still some issues occurring, certainly when we have cloud-to-cloud integration. So the next step is actually looking at how can we improve our integrations for the cloud, and then we probably will look to an iPaaS solution.
Okay. Well, Dries, we are a bit tight on time, so we want to thank you at this point for a very, very interesting presentation. Thank you. And as I said, this really is one of the foundation's most important pieces also in understanding how to actually address the next speaker's topic.
Okay.
So thank you, Dries, and checking out from Belgium.
Okay.
All right,
thank
guys.
you. It was a joy.
All right, guys. Our next speaker is Sangeet Paul Choudary. I had the great pleasure of getting to know Sangeet maybe 6-7 years ago, if I remember correctly, in Singapore, just about the time when he released his first book on platform economies and platform business models. Sangeet is probably the foremost authority on platforms in the world, I dare say. And his resume is so long that I will not use up all of our time to read all of it, because it is extremely long and impressive. But just to give you some perspective into Sangeet's work, he has written 2 books, and a third one actually is about to come out this summer, a must-read, I must say. And he has been at this topic for well over a decade. Sangeet's been featured on Harvard Business Review's most must-reads top 10 list 4 times. He's of course also an advisor to several Fortune 500 companies. He sits on various ministerial committees and as a policy advisor. He's, as I said, a best-selling co-author and author of books Platform Revolution, Platform Scale, and then the new one is going to be Platform Scale for a Post-Pandemic World. And his latest endeavor is to have been selected to Harvard's Kennedy School on Global Leadership and Public Policy Program. So Sangeet really, really knows what he's talking about when it comes to platform economies and platform business models. But I don't want to steal more of our time together with Sangeet. So let's hook over to Singapore, and Sangeet, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you about the platform economy and the role of platforms and APIs in creating new value in the era of digital transformation. When we think about digital transformation, we often talk about changing the enterprise, changing to agile, changing our backend, changing our data silos, and so on. But when we really think about the value that digital transformation brings, we need to start thinking about the fundamental nature of how data impacts business models, how the creation of digital markets unlocks new value. And so to start with framing this idea of platforms and API, I want to start by putting forward a mental model about how to think about the value that gets unlocked because of platforms and APIs and because of digital. The way to think about it is that if you think of the evolution of the internet or evolution of technology over the last 20-25 years, what we notice that every time a specific component or variable denoting supply or demand in the market was digitized, a whole new range of market interactions were enabled. And this enabled the creation of entirely new companies, enabled unlocking of entirely new value, and that's what makes digital transformation fundamentally exciting. Let's take a couple of examples over here. Think of the late 90s when we started seeing companies like Amazon digitizing consumption for the first time. Before this, consumption used to be captured in the form of data in a sales receipt. So you'd go to a retailer and you would pay for something, and that data about what you purchased was captured in the sales receipt, but it was never used to create value back in the business. What Amazon did was it took all of this data and it used collaborative filtering to create entirely new market interactions. So if you go to Amazon and it says people who bought this also bought this. That's essentially a prompt to move you to new market interactions using data about the purchases that people have made in the past. So consumption data started unlocking new value in the late 90s. What we saw in the early 2000s was that we started seeing the rise of social networks, but to a large extent, identity was still not verified on the internet. Our digital identity was not verifiable, and hence the creation of trust was difficult. What Facebook did was, for the first time, it digitized identity in a way that it could be verified and that it could be used to create trust in market interaction. And then in 2008, Facebook opened this out to the whole world in the form of Facebook Connect. So if you use a third-party application and it allows you to log in with Facebook, you're using Facebook Connect to verify your identity over there. And the fact that your identity was verified on Facebook originally by tying it to a university email or a company email in the early days, that enabled that verification to happen for real-world transactions to verify your identity. And because of the opening of Facebook Connect in 2008, you start seeing the rise of the sharing economy 2008 onwards. Companies like Airbnb, TaskRabbit, Zali, these started coming up around that time because identity had been digitized. We see another important development around the same time. In the mid-2000s, Google acquired a company called Keyhole Technologies, which eventually became Google Maps. And we started seeing the rise of the enterprise cloud or the consumer cloud in the early to mid-2000s as well. So in 2007, 3G connectivity started becoming very powerful. Apple essentially launched a smartphone which now put a computer in your pocket by combining 3G connectivity with an app hosted on the cloud, so that a thin app could run on your phone and complex computations could be done on the cloud. And the combination of having a computer in your pocket and having digitized location through Google Maps allowed new location-based services like Uber and Foursquare to come up. So location got digitized around this time once we combined the power of Google Maps with the power of a computer in our pockets. And so we see that whenever a new component of supply or demand gets digitized for the first time, the digitization of location, for instance, digitizes a moving car and allows a moving car to be connected and matched to a request for the ride. Whenever we see a new component of demand or supply being digitized, we start seeing the potential for new market interactions, and that's how new value gets unlocked in the digital economy. What we've seen over the last 7 to 10 years is new forms of digitization. We've seen the digitization of reputation, and post-COVID, as more work goes remote, the digitization of reputation is becoming increasingly more important, because if you've got to hire a freelancer remotely, you need information about their reputation, and digitized reputation helps over there. We also started seeing, with the rise of the Internet of Things, the digitization of machine performance. Digital twins of machines are now being created, because of which machines can be digitized and a view of the entire industrial process can be created because of the data coming out of the machines. And the final thing that we're beginning to see is that with the enterprise shifting to the cloud, workflows and business processes are getting digitized. And what happens is, once we move a workflow from a siloed software to a cloud-hosted software, which can now interact and connect with other cloud-hosted software, you've now digitized and made more fluid the data about that particular workflow or process. So if you combine these three things, the digitization of worker reputation, human reputation, combined with the digitization of machine performance, combined with the digitization of process performance, you can now digitize entire industrial systems. Essentially, every industrial system is composed of humans, of machines, and of processes that align their actions and activities. And as we see with these three shifts, all these things are increasingly getting digitized. You can now not only have a digitized machine or a digitized shop floor worker, but you can have a digitized process end-to-end, which consists of multiple machines generating data on the shop floor, multiple workers working with it, and multiple workflow management tools managing all of this data. You can then use this digitized process and enable it to interact with an external process in another company, and through that, entire value chains are increasingly getting digitized. And this is where the power of platforms and APIs really comes through, because once we start digitizing supply and demand in this fashion, once we start digitizing every value creating component in a value chain, we can restructure business models in a way that was not possible in the past. So let's get to that. But before we get to that, I want to talk about, very quickly taking a step back, talk about what exactly we mean when we say platforms, because the word platform is widely misunderstood. And to really understand that, we need to understand that today, as processes start getting digitized, as new value is being created because of every component of the value chain becoming digitized, you can have new companies so specialized that they do exactly one activity in the value chain, convert it into an API that can be embedded into every other company's process. And we see a company like Stripe, for example, doing exactly that by embedding its payments functionality across a whole range of different processes. Think of a company like SmartCar, which digitizes every function on the car, which then allows third-party developers to access those functionalities on the car. And so what we're seeing is the creation of micro value, the creation of the unbundling and the creation of unique unitary value propositions. And you can build entire companies around single unitary value propositions, compared to how we used to build things in the past, where we used to vertically integrate multiple products, multiple parts of the value chain. We can now increasingly see greater specialization. Now, where this leads us is that with the rise of digitization and with the rise of specialization, we're seeing a fundamental shift in value creation and in business models. Traditionally, value was created in highly vertically integrated companies that worked like a pipeline, where a single company would integrate across infrastructure ownership, product creation, customer service. It would manage the end-to-end pipeline. It would create the product, ship it to the customer, and the customer would pay for it. So it was a very linear flow of value, very resource intensive, process intensive. What we're seeing with increasing digitization, increasing connectivity, increasing data, is that the most powerful companies today instead leverage a platform-based model, where the platform creates a central infrastructure into which external parties, producers and consumers can connect, create value, exchange value with each other. And the platform business in itself does not act as the sole creator of products and services. The majority of value is created in this ecosystem of producers and consumers exchanging value with each other, interacting with each other. And the role of the platform over here is to provide the central infrastructure and create set the terms of governance in terms of what interactions are allowed, which ones are encouraged, which ones are not encouraged. So the platform is very much an infrastructure and a governance mechanism to enable entirely new markets of value creation at various points in the value chain. So if you think of it, we moved from a place where we would want to own the whole value chain through vertical integration to now specializing and providing open infrastructures where highly specialized players can plug in and interact with each other. Let's take a few examples of what exactly this means from business perspective, because when you think about platforms, they create a lot of opportunity. They seemingly create a lot of opportunity because every platform benefits from something called network effects. When more producers connect onto a platform, the choice of supply increases on the platform. That attracts even more consumers. As more consumers come in, the value of the platform as an influence mechanism, as a channel, becomes more powerful, and so more producers come in as well. So network effects constantly increase value on the platform, and producers and consumers both benefit from this increased value because they're able to access more of the market. But at the same time, there's a flip side to the platform economy as well. When you think about network effects, and when you think even more so about, say, data network effects, where more providers of data bring in data into the platform, and the platform accumulates all of this data and benefits from it. When you think about these factors, network effects, data network effects, there's increasing accumulation in the platform and hence increasing dependence for the various stakeholders on the platform. Think of learning effects as well. Think of the Facebook newsfeed, where the more we train the algorithm, the better it knows us, the more addicted we get. So there's more value in the training, but there's also increased dependence. And that's the flip side of the platform economy. We need to understand that platforms do not just create value, they also increase concentration. That's why some of the biggest companies in the world today, some of the fastest growing companies in the world today, are all leveraging platform business models. Another thing to think about is that platforms, a big narrative around platforms is that they are open, and we have companies like Google saying don't be evil, or Facebook trying to change the world. We've now in 2021 we've realized that a lot of those are just narratives. So what's important to understand is, what does openness exactly mean? Because we increasingly talk about open business models and open economy. What we need to understand is the flip side to openness is a new form of control. And whether you're running a platform or participating on other platforms, you need to understand the notion of this new form of control. That to me is the single most important and the least understood aspect of the platform economy. With all forms of openness, there's some form of control that comes in. What happens in the platform economy is there's a constant tension between being open and controlling. Think of something like Google. Apparently, the search engine is open. Anybody can, set up a website and be ranked on Google. But increasingly, you have to keep managing your website to rank on Google, and so you have to follow Google's terms and conditions in the form of search engine optimization. That's a new form of control. Let's take an even more interesting example over here. Think of Android. Android started as this apparent open ecosystem where anybody could come and create a phone, third-party app developers could come and create new apps. Unlike Apple, which was supposed to be closed, Android was open and hence apparently even more benevolent than some of the other options out there. And what Android realized pretty early on was that there's a price to openness, which is the lack of control. So what happened was, by being open, Android allowed LG, Samsung, Amazon, all of these companies to come in, fork the operating system, create their own version of Android, and hence create the App Store on top of their own version of Android. So the power of owning the App Store shifted away from Android to LG, Samsung, and all of these other companies. That's when Google realized that it needed a new form of control. And so Google started setting up a new set of control points. First, Google realized that it had something called Google Maps, which was a really powerful asset in this ecosystem. Because a phone needs mapping for navigation. Self-driving cars need mapping for navigation. And so Google Maps is a very important control point. Google took maps away from the open Android infrastructure, captured it inside its closed Google Play system, and required partners, phone developers, etc., to license Google Play in addition to taking up Android. And these partners also had to join the Open Handset Alliance, which prevented them from setting up their own app stores. So Google Maps allowed them to create that control mechanism that then ensured that Google could dictate terms to the partners. Google Cloud Messaging was another such control point, because Google Cloud Messaging enables developers to send messages to users, notifications on Android phones, and so on. Now, while that can be replicated, Google Cloud Messaging is just one of those additional things that, when taken away from Open Android and put inside Google Play, makes Google Play much more attractive for developers than building for the Open Android system. And so increasingly, Google started pushing more value away from Android into Google Play. It was not just a rebranding exercise, it was a way to bring the App Store away from these various partners and back to Google. And that's how Google used Maps as a way to set up a control point and create its own ecosystem. Companies like Amazon failed because their whole strategy of forking Android and creating their own ecosystem no longer survived. We recently heard LG stopped its handphone business, smartphone business, after spending billions of dollars, and now there's nobody willing to buy it because all the value shifted to Google. The value was not with the handset manufacturers anymore. And that happened because of Google's strategic choice of control points. So we've talked about concentration, we've talked about control points. Let's talk about how APIs fundamentally change the way business models work. One of the first things APIs do is they dissolve firm boundaries. They change the boundary of the firm. And what that means is that traditionally, as I mentioned, companies are vertically integrated. Companies would do everything from managing the infrastructure and operations to building products to serving customers. They would bring everything in-house because the cost of managing activities outside was prohibitive. there were policing costs, there were transaction costs, and all of these in the era of expensive communication and lack of data, anything pre-internet, the cost of managing this outside was super expensive. What's happened as a result of digitization is now the cost of managing these activities outside is not expensive anymore. You just need to make an API call and you can benefit from the specialization that another company brings. If you're a bank and somebody else has a better credit scoring model, you can start using their credit scoring model because of it's just an API call away. And so we started seeing firm boundaries dissolving. We've started seeing companies becoming more specialized. If you see a lot of startups, they just focus on one part of the value chain and start from there and expand from there. So specialization is increasingly rewarded, and vertical integration, or at least all types of no holds barred vertical integration, is not as rewarding as it used to be, because the cost of managing the activity outside the firm is not that high anymore. What happens as a result is that APIs also dissolve industry boundaries. Because when firm boundaries start getting dissolved, you start seeing this unbundling happen. Every element of the firm becomes a new company in itself. So traditionally, companies would be vertically integrated because they needed to do everything in-house. Now that you have this unbundling, we can move to an era where things start getting rebundled. And this rebundling happens not around the product that a company is selling, but around a customer's need. That's why we're in this world of customer centricity, where you can rebundle third-party propositions and create a new proposition for the customer. If you're a mobility company, you can rebundle parts of the financial services value chain, you can rebundle parts of the healthcare value chain, parts of the entertainment value chain, and provide a comprehensive proposition to an end customer. And this is where we really see today's value creation happening. We talk about ecosystems and how ecosystems are different from industry boundaries. Fundamentally, that happens because of this rebundling. Initially, digitization led to unbundling. It allowed activities to be done outside the boundary of the firm. But for consumers, having to engage with multiple providers becomes very expensive. And so what happens in the world of platforms is platforms do a lot of this rebundling. They aggregate a lot of providers, create a consistent consumer experience across them, and that's how a lot of this rebundling happens. So that is why we're moving to this era where increasingly we're moving away from value of unbundling to a place where a lot of value is created through rebundling. Now, when we think about this cycle of bundled to unbundled to rebundled, and when we think of different industries, there are different points in this cycle. So something like the media industry got unbundled in the late 90s and has ever since become rebundled. Music got unbundled and is now rebundled as a Spotify playlist. In between, it used to be, anybody could share a file over Napster, and now a lot of value is in having a Spotify playlist. And similarly, news got rebundled, unbundled from the newspaper, but rebundled as a news feed, and so on. So what we're seeing increasingly, the value is not just in unbundling, it's in rebundling. The value moves into rebundling. And what that does is it starts fundamentally shifting power to the few players who can do the bundling. And so industry structures fundamentally shift. Take an example of the media industry. In the late 90s, we saw this unbundling happen both on the supply and the demand side, because traditional media companies, they specialized on creating great content and owning a distribution channel. The internet unbundled distribution and allowed anyone to distribute for free. And then new technologies like Wiki, new publishing tools from companies like Adobe allowed new forms of production to happen. Anybody could now create content. And so content creation also got unbundled from the media company. What happened as a result was there was an explosion of content, explosion of distribution, and two companies, Facebook and Google, one with the news feed, one with the search engine, started rebundling all this content in a scalable way. In fact, if you look at companies that tried to rebundle it the old way, Yahoo, for instance, tried to rebundle this explosion of content in an editorial manner and failed because it did not scale with the rate of unbundling and the rate of new content creation. So the value moves away from the commoditized media companies who become increasingly dependent on these two players to the players who manage rebundling. These two over here in particular, who managed a lot of this rebundling around the customer's engagement and data. So essentially what we see is that traditional bundles like newspapers were built around the editorial functions of a company. Today's bundles, for example, a news feed, is built around a user's data and their level of engagement. And that's fundamentally what's different in the new bundling. The new bundling is around the customer. It's no longer around the product value chain that the company used to have. We see the same thing happen, for example, in financial services, where traditional banks had built financial products and then they had the distribution system in the form of agents and bank branches. And what we've seen is we've seen the rise of open banking, where financial products are becoming APIs, easily embeddable in third-party ecosystems. So the supply has become unbundled from the bank and can be distributed anywhere. And we've also started seeing the rise of new regulation like PSD2, which allows third parties to access data from the bank. And so what ends up happening now is we're going to start seeing the bundling of financial services around whoever understands the customer best, manages their credit worthiness better than traditional banks, and is then able to provide them the right financial services at the right point. And so we start seeing companies like Square, Shopify, which have now started entering financial services. And they're also in a very good position to do a lot of this rebundling because they don't rely on financial services to make money. They make money on the software side. They also have better data because of which they are able to provide much better priced financial services that in turn increases adoption of their systems and hence even more data creation. So we're starting to see this new rebundling happen as well. Think of what happened in the telco value chain. A lot of the value in the telco value chain would sit with whoever could distribute the application. So in the late 90s, the telcos benefited from a lot of the value. They would provide the ringtones and the other value-added services. With the rise of Java-enabled handsets, the app could be embedded in the phone. So phone manufacturers, Nokia and BlackBerry, shot up in value. And now that has shifted away again with the shift in technology. Apps can now be done on the cloud, and 3G connectivity allows it to be done seamlessly as a thin app on the phone, a thin client on the phone. And that essentially is where Apple has rebundled the usage of the phone. So essentially, if you think of Nokia's phone, it was a product bundle. It was what Nokia felt was right for the customer. An iPhone is a consumer-centered bundle because I can choose any number of applications and customize my iPhone to work in a certain way for me. And so again, the bundling, the power shifts to whoever does the rebundling. So what I want to talk about finally as we close this is that when we think about the role of technology, the power of technology is not just in optimization. The power of technology is not just, for example, in better distribution, in more informed vertical integration, or in open consumption, because you can now use the internet to digitize omni-channel journeys and serve customers across multiple touch points. The power really is in building ecosystems. And that happens when you fundamentally re-architect your business. You fundamentally think about how can we do new innovation? How can we create new products by leveraging open innovation? How can we leverage external ecosystems of product creators, service providers around our business and orchestrate them, rebundle their value propositions for the customer? And how can we go beyond that and really create cross-industry ecosystems? Because industry boundaries are dissolving. We're now moving to a place where we can take components from 5 different traditional value chains and create an entirely new proposition for the end customer. And that is the power of APIs. That specialization and rebundling is possible because of that API level connectivity. And the ability to manage that rebundling is possible because platforms have this central one-stop knowledge of a consumer and are able to rebundle multiple propositions towards them. And that's what makes the API economy and the platform economy really powerful. Thank you so much for listening.
All right. Thank you very much, Sangeet. Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, Peter, doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good, I'm good. It's evening already in Singapore, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Hey, thank you very much for your insightful speech. Every time I listen to you or read your materials, it just sort of inspires a billion of different new ideas and thoughts. Listening to you now, I was thinking mostly about the possibility of incumbents to survive really in this new structure of the economy. And you, for example, talked about the financial industry quite a lot. How do you see that? Do the incumbents in financial industry, I think it's an interesting example since they were fairly early adapters of digitalization in general, but then things evolved quite rapidly and they're still a bit stuck in many of their old ways. What is the recipe for survival for an incumbent in that situation?
I think it's important to understand a few things before you think about what the platform economy, what the digital economy means for you. The first thing is you need to understand where is your industry in terms of this shift, because there are certain industries that are more resistant to this shift and certain industries that are more prone to this shift. What we've seen is that the faster the critical components of value in a value chain start getting digitized, the easier that industry gets impacted because of platforms. We've seen that, for example, in media, where the core value is in the content, and the content became digital back in the 90s, and so most media companies got disrupted there. We saw, with the industrial internet coming in, a lot of these things started moving into the physical economy as well. My manufacturing, logistics, they're getting impacted. What is the degree to which digitization impacts your industry is the first component you need to think about. The second thing you need to think about is how much is traditional regulation protecting you, and how is that going to play out in the future? And what's happening in banking in Europe is a great example of that, where fundamentally banking could always have been a digital business, but you needed regulation to work in your favor for that to happen. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is really think about if you had a traditional vertically integrated business, as I mentioned in the speech, where are you going to create your new core if this is going to be the impact that digital technologies have on you? And you don't necessarily need to have only one core. You could have a business model portfolio. So if you look at Amazon, for instance, Amazon has a portfolio across a customer aggregation business, which is Amazon, Alexa, Prime, and so on. It also has infrastructure businesses, the fulfillment by Amazon, Amazon Logistics, and it also has very compelling product businesses, which are coupled with the customer aggregation businesses. So a Kindle or an Echo is a way for the customer aggregation business to gain that adoption. So if you think of Amazon, it's not an incumbent, but the reason I take that example is it's thinking through the various business model positions it can take, how these positions can work together, and what's that overall portfolio that's going to emerge. And so if I take an incumbent example, a really good example is Schibsted Media Group in Norway, which is pretty interesting because traditional media companies had a business model portfolio across content, advertising, classifieds. And Schibsted decided that advertising was moving to the big guys, Google and Facebook, so it focused on classifieds, moved on to marketplaces, made a lot of new value creation over there, and coupled that with focusing only on non-advertising premium content and focusing on other parts of the digital advertising value chain, which are not about aggregating customers. So as a combination of that, they've created a very compelling business model portfolio today. So that's how I would think about addressing an issue like this.
Yeah, interesting. Another thing that would be really interesting to hear from you, your point of view or your guess maybe, you talked about different asset classes or types of information being digitized. The last being the business process. What is next, right? And what sort of profound impact will that next thing have?
I think I think we're in this very interesting point in history where the biggest thing that will remain to be digitized after every element of the value chain has been digitized is trust. Trust is the one thing that has not been successfully digitized and successfully unbundled from companies. Now, if you look at all of these things, business processes, what happens is when you digitize a business process, the data about it, the information about it gets unbundled from the company itself and can be used elsewhere. Now, what's happened with trust is we've created several layers of trust in the economy over time. If you think about, literally every company in the financial services value chain, they are in the business of managing trust. Insurance, it's all in the business of managing trust. And what we're beginning to see is that as we get into more of a platform economy, the need for trust becomes even more important. And that is where I believe that with the rise of crypto tokens and moving to decentralized computing through Ethereum, moving to decentralized finance, we are just starting to set up the basic core components of the digitization of trust and the modularization of trust so that it becomes unbundled from the big central intermediaries. So I think that's going to be the big next shift, which is going to play out over the next I would say even a decade, because we're still very early in this game. We still haven't figured out very good, compelling funding models to fund these new trust systems. We haven't figured out very good governance mechanisms for these new trust systems. So it's still going to take some time, but that's going to be the big shift that I would look out for.
That's interesting, and of course we're seeing some of those phenomena emerging already, and I would have to absolutely agree with you on that assessment. Well, thank you, Sangeet, for your time and your presentation. It has been really enlightening, and to all of you there in the audience, I truly recommend, and I do not say this as a book promotion thing, I from the bottom of my heart recommend take a look at Sangeet's writing, either on his site or read Platform Revolution, Sangeet's first book, because that is an extremely good starting off guide to this world of platforms, and then onwards from there. So thank you very much, Sangeet, and let's keep in touch.
Great, thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye. All right, folks, that's it for this time. I hope you really found this interesting and that this got your thinking going and you got new ideas and thoughts and inspiration to your endeavors, whatever they may be. We of course are extremely grateful for you guys being there, and thank you for participation. Our next big event will be sometime in October. It will be the Meeting Point event, Meeting Point 2021. We have not yet decided on the headline for it, but I'm sure it will be extremely interesting and compelling. So, thanks again, and see you out there in different projects and other kinds of cooperation that we do together. Checking out from Helsinki. Bye.